remember in that truck, I was like, God, I've got this figured out. And I felt like a king. And I walked inside my house and everything was perfect. And I went to bed and I woke up about 2 a.m. to cuddle, and she's gone. I didn't hear from God. I had no relationship with him. So I couldn't hear his voice. I couldn't feel him in my situation. All I felt was the enemy. When I went out to the camper, I took my Kimber and I went to cock it when I got out of the jail that third time, and I just went. And then fast forward a little bit, I'm in Arizona on a Holy Spirit-filled adventure, and this lady starts prophesying over me, and she said, "You're not going to believe it unless I hand you this." And so in one home, we saw a dead man dying on the bed, healed, and we saw blind eyes open, and we saw a mute person, all healed at one home. And I asked God, I'm like, all right, God, I want to end slavery in Pakistan completely. What does that look like? There's one verse in Scripture. If you will live by this one verse, that's it. This is what you stand on. This will change your life forever.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Holy Living Podcast. We're your hosts, Gabriel and Christa Anderson. And with us, we have our guest, our friend, Kelley. Kevin is a businessman and has been working in missions, doing missions work for, I don't even know how many years, but we're just blessed to have him with us to hear some of his story and some of his testimonies of the work he's been doing. Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me, you guys. This is an honor.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about just your story? How did you come to faith in Jesus?
I grew up in a secular home, and when I was about 12, my mom and dad, they got a divorce. So there was a lot of drugs involved, and just we didn't even know what church smelled like. And my dad started dating a Christian. Her name was Leela. She was on fire for God, worship leader, and her whole family's in the ministry. And so dad started going to church. He started dragging me to church. When I was 12, the preacher was talking about hell and how if we're living in sin or doing things wrong, we're going to hell. And I was just terrified. So I was one of the first ones up front when he called for prayer. And I did the prayer and everybody clapped and called me Christian. And from that moment forward, I had about 24 years where I was involved in church. And I was playing out that normal American Christianity lifestyle where I was I still gamble, I play poker, I still drink, I still did things of the world, and I mixed it with church, and church was just kind of afterthought in my life. It was part of it. It was just something I had to do. Like I just knew you had to go to church. It was just the right thing to do. And I remember getting in my car and praying before I got in my car, Lord, if I'm sorry if I sinned this week. I'm sorry I said a cuss word, and I'm sorry I looked at that woman. I'm sorry I did these things before I got in the car. That way I'm good to go in case I got in a car wreck. And this was what my view of being a Christian was. And I don't know how many times I went to the altar and did the same prayer, and the people clapped and they thought I got saved every time I went down to the altar. And that was kind of my view of Christianity. My kids were in Christian school. I'm a very driven and passionate man. So everywhere I worked, they said I was their best employee. And then one day I was kind of led to start mowing yards on my own. I had a lot of favor in my life. So it seemed like everything that I did and put my hands on, like it just turned to gold. It's crazy. I remember seeing this lady at a fish fry, and she was on my jet ski, which is crazy. And I remember saying, that's my wife. And so before you know it, it's a church fish fry. And I go up to my stepmom and I'm like, who's that lady on the jet ski? And they were like, well, that's David Newman's wife. So that was just one of my old friends at school's wife now. And so I was just sick to my stomach. A year later, we're married. 14 years later, we've created this business and been successful. And I didn't just buy a house. I bought the house I wanted, the trucks, the cars, the clothes, just anything that we wanted. Because in our business, when we started selling mowers, we became the largest volume dealer on the planet Earth for bad boy mowers. So just that favor just continued to pour into my life. And I remember one day, like it's so clear, we had sold probably, I don't know, 30 mowers that day. and I'd probably made, I don't know, 100, $200,000 or something. And I remember just getting in my fancy 100 something $1,000 show truck and had my fancy watch, and I was going down the fancy road where all the rich people lived, and I was pulling in my fancy driveway. And my wife at the time, she always made sure that my food was hot coming out of the oven when I got in the door. So I mean, everything was just perfect, what it felt like to me. And even the world was saying, "Man, y'all got a perfect marriage. Like y'all work together, y'all get along, y'all do everything together." And I'll never forget, I turned on my 90-inch TV and I watched TV, went to bed, and everything was just perfect. My kids were out there playing in the swimming pool, and to me it was perfect. And I remember before I went in the house, I remember saying this, and I was like, God, I've got this thing figured out. Kids are in Christian school. I pray over my house. I anoint it. We play worship music in the house, but we honestly have no clue who God is. We had no clue. I might as well have been an atheist in this church house. I might as well have been an atheist anointing my kids. I might as well have been an atheist when I was praying. I might as well have been an atheist reading this Bible, because I had no kind of relationship with this entity. I had nothing. All I had was a book. I had the instruction manual, and I went to church, and it's like I marked these boxes, and I'll never forget. And I was so cocky. Even when I go to church, I was like, God, I could have been working today. I could have made money, but I came to church for you. And I remember in that truck, I was like, God, I've got this figured out. And I felt like a king. I didn't just have one truck, I had two. I didn't just have a car, I had a Cadillac CTSV. I didn't just have a swimming pool, I had the swimming pool. No debt. I had $1 million in my bank account. I was just setting good. And I walked inside my house, and everything was perfect. And I went to bed, and I woke up about 2 in the morning to cuddle, and she's gone. So I walked into the other bedroom. She wasn't in there. I went upstairs, checked in the kids' rooms, looked in the garage, and the car's gone. I go to work. Everything's going like normal. I told them what's happening. Like, she's missing, and got the police involved. And uh, a couple of nights went by, and I just had a feeling. And I was always being led. I always had this voice, but I didn't know what it was. And I just got in my truck and I drove, and I ended up at the end of this parking lot, and I walked down the parking lot, and my car was in the shop. Inside the shop, I looked in the window, I knocked on the door, and my salesman answered, who was also my best friend. And she was behind him, and he had a gun to my head, and she was saying, "Just kill him. He's found us. He's going to kill us." And I just remember just saying, "Hey, it's time for you to come home. You got a business to run, you got kids to take care of." And I'm hauled off in handcuffs. Before you know it, he's moved into my house. He's driving my cars, and I'm in a little camper at Pat Mays Lake. And I'm trying to get a audience with my pastor, but he's, bless his heart, he's got so much going on. He just didn't have time to visit with me. I called some of my Christian friends, and they all had stuff going on, so I could never get to that conversation where I needed some help. And I went out there to get my truck, and with my grandma, and they ended up arresting me again. I had the deed to my yard, my property, the house, car, and they just threw it on the ground. It meant nothing. And they arrested me and put me in jail. And when I got out, I went back to my camper. And as a man, I could fix everything. It just seemed like if there was a problem, I could fix it. If the tire was flat, I could get it fixed. If the business was down that month, I could fix that. I could sell more mowers. And but this issue I could not fix. And no matter when I prayed, it's like I'm praying to this table. Like I didn't hear from God. I had no relationship with him, so I couldn't hear his voice. I couldn't feel him in my situation. All I felt was the enemy. And when I went out to the camper, I took my Kimber, and I went to cock it when I got out of the jail that third time, and I just went. In my eyes, it could not be any worse than what I'm in that moment. I felt like I was literally in a living hell. My kids didn't want to hang out with me. They wanted to hang out with him because he was more fun than me. I had more problems. And so in that place, I just went to take my life. And but God. I believe we all have a but God story. My story, I believe that God was trying to talk to all my Christian friends. I believe that God was trying to talk to my pastor and tell him, hey, this guy's going to kill himself. And I know God was shaking this region. He did not want me to kill myself. He doesn't want bad to come to any of us. And he touched a man that was about 3 hours away. And anyways, this man called me. Super long story. But he called my phone when I'm in the middle of the trigger pull, and it startled me. I just saw a 469 number, and then I got the nerve back up. He called me again, and then the third time I waited a while, and I was listening to Corn. I was really trying to work myself up to this. It's a big moment, to do this, of course. And so I got my nerve back up, got my gun ready, and the phone rang again. So I just answered it. And when I answered it, this man on the other line, he was like, he just sounded crazy. And I was like, man, I'm sorry. I got to get off the phone. And so I'm going to hang up. And, the volume on my phone is so high because I work at a lawnmower shop, so everything's high. So he's like, wait, is your gun silver with the brown handle? And I literally put it back up to my ear, and I was like, man, what did you just say? He said, is your gun silver with a brown handle? So I stood up. I was on the couch in my camper. I'm looking out the window, and I thought, man, this weirdo is sitting here watching me do this. And he was like, man, I don't have time to explain. I'm on the way. I'm about halfway there. If you would, I know where Chili's is there in Paris. Do you mind meeting me at Chili's? Well, I've got nothing else to lose, And he's like, man, I don't care what you do. He said, will you please just wait until you hear what I have to say before you do it? And so I put my clothes on, and I ended up going to Chili's there in Paris. And he pulls up in this little Prius, and he is this huge dude with the beard, like look like he just beat up, three dudes off a Harley. And he came straight up to me, and he grabbed me, and he picked me up in a hug. Now, if you would have drove by, you would have thought that me and him were lovers. But the way he held me, it was very, very uncomfortable to me. I'd never really gotten a good hug like that from a man. Like that was really the first time. And what I realized was there was my cheek was getting wet. Mm. And I realized the man had tears, and he was crying. And I kind of pulled away from him, and I looked him in the face, and I said, man, you really care about me, don't you? And he said a cuss word. He said, man, I don't know what is going on. Like he literally, he said, man, I'm here because I'm terrified. And he gave me a scripture, and uh, he told me lots of things about me, personal things, that I had a $30,000 watch, and that I had this, and he just knew everything about me.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did this guy know you at all, or was he just dialed this number God gave him, or what happened?
so I bought this fancy truck, and it was a SEMA truck, and so I had to go to this car show. And so I won this big trophy at the car show, and he came up to me and said, hey, I'm building a truck. Can I get your phone number? And so he wrote down my phone number, and he put Brown Recluse because that was the name of my truck. So anyway, so I'm asking, and that's the other thing. Like I'm asking, like, okay, like how did you find me? Like how do you know all these things about me? And he said, well, the dude told me in my living room. And I was like, what dude? And he was like, well, if I would have looked at him, I would have went blind. So I had my head covered. And he said when he spoke, it was like thunder and lightning going through him. And so I know today that was a messenger angel. They're absolutely terrifying. He believes it was God himself, which I know he would have just exploded into pieces. Mm-hmm. He had been smoking weed, and he thought maybe he had got maybe a bad hit or something in his weed. His wife was a Christian, and he was a lifelong diehard atheist, and so they were always arguing. So his wife had left him, and they were actually in the middle of a divorce. His business was going under. He was financially not able even to come. In fact, he ran out of gas in front of Chisholm High School on the way here. The dude just pulled up right behind him, put gas in his car. Again, the timing was just perfect for him to meet me. And he told me my problem. And he knew everything about me. He knew my passions, my dreams. He knew that stuff. And he said, your problem is that you're putting all of your hope, your faith, and your trust in the spirit of the world. And I said, sir, I don't know what that means. He said, well, your own kids don't want to hang out with you right now. Your wife is not with you anymore. Your business doesn't mean anything. The $1 million in your bank account means nothing to you. You have put in all your passion into these things. Your own pastor don't even want to talk to you right now. Like, he knew everything about me. And I was just so confused. I was like, I don't understand. And he said, if you'll put all of that in the Spirit of God and the Spirit of God alone, he will never let you down. He will always be there for you. But if you put that hope and that trust and that faith in the things of this world, again, you will continuously be let down. And he got in his car, drove off, and I went back to my camper, and my Bible sitting on my table, and it was in my nightstand at my house. So it supernaturally appeared. This is it. In fact, it's got my name on it and stuff.
Wow.
My daddy gave me this when I was like 12. But this was sitting on my table, and I was staring at it like this, and I said, God, I've never really understood anything in that book. I'm not a pirate. And that's kind of what I was thinking. It's a bunch of thous and these, and I really just didn't get it. And I told him, I said, God, if you want me, because I knew he wanted me to read it. I said, God, if you want me to understand something in here, you're going to have to show me something I can relate to. And what I did is I just took my hand like this and I just opened it, and I looked down, and it's the first page of Job. And again, I was kind of like, I just didn't really pay attention to the Old Testament too much. The New Testament was easier for me to read. And so I read about a man named Job. And he got everything he wanted, had a ton of favor on his life, and I felt like him. And then, all of a sudden, after one day, it's like it all fell apart for him. And I felt like that was happening to me. So again, it was something I can relate to. And there's something in there, Gabe, that bothered me, was that he called Job a mighty man of God. And he said Job never sinned out of his mouth through any of this. And it was like nails scratching down the chalkboard. You see, when God speaks into your life, it's usually not the life that you're living. It's usually something he wants you to do or he sees you doing. And I was so angry, and I said, God, why did you show me this garbage? And this is the first time I've ever heard the Lord's voice. And it was like a thought. And he said, Kevin, this is how I've always seen you. This is what I created you to be. I don't see you as what you do wrong. I see you as my creation. And I broke in half. And at 2 or 3 in the morning, I broke down in front of my chair. I put my knees, and I didn't know how to do it, but I put my head in the couch cushion, or in the recliner cushion, and I just cried out to God. And I said, God, I want to be made a new creature. God, I am so sorry. I've lived a life for the world. I've lived a life for passion and for things of this world, and it's all garbage. It's all sand. And I said, God, if you can make me into a new creature, please, please, I want to be something new. And I said, God, if you can, if you can't, can you please just help me not wake up? And this was my prayer. So I woke up, and I thought it was going to be rainbows and unicorns. And that's when my problems started. I had 2 years of deliverance. There's a video that went viral. I told Krista about it years ago, but I was called the Choctaw Devil. And I ended up going to Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. I got some deliverance there. I left the school, and I felt like I was supposed to go and start doing things for him. And because I asked him, I said, God, what do you want me to do? Now, all right, now I'm done. I've got you. I don't need anything else. And so my prayer life started changing, Gabe. And before that, it was, God, I need a car payment. God, help me with my marriage. God, help me with my legs hurting. God, help me with this. God, I want a new car. Help me with my business. All of my prayer, help me, Father, so I don't go to hell. All my prayers were selfish, but this one prayer was not. God, I've got everything I need. Is there anything I can do for you? I owe you that. that's the least I can do for you. And he gave me a dream, and I went on my first mission trip. And 23 nations later, here we are.
Like I don't know if I'd heard any of your story from whatever you might have told her. I've never heard that. I've got questions upon questions, but we might have to do that another time because well, I got one just to get my brain around it. The guy who came to you and knew everything about you, you said he was smoking weed because his everything was falling apart, and God Himself. I mean, that could be the Lord Jesus or an angel came in. Did he know this stuff about you because the angel had told him right then, or did that happen before and then he had life
He
experience?
said the man that showed up in my living room told me. And his testimony is really crazy. He's a believer now.
Yes.
You might have to put us in touch with him. Okay.
It,
That's awesome. Like, wow.
Brought two hurting people together.
Yeah.
That's what happened instead of
Yeah.
just
and even in the middle of my pain, like still in that camper, I moved it up to the shop because they kicked me out of the lake, and I was having a bad night. Like I think I had a warrant out for something from the past, and they had arrested me for that. And of course, it was a wash, but I was depressed and down, and I literally am just sitting in my camper 11 or like 10 o'clock at night, and I hear this on my door, and I opened it up, and it was Chris, and he had a Avengers movie, and it was like when it first came out. He's like, "Hey man, I'm here. We're gonna watch this. We're gonna go eat at a steak place, and I'm gonna pay for it, and then we're gonna watch Avengers together." And like I said, he drove from Weatherford, Texas, to because he knew I was hurting. The most unlikely people are the ones that just show up out of the blue. And I remember that night I was feeling just like a piece of garbage again, even after, all my little prayers, and I was kind of in the middle of my deliverance. And he just shows up again.
that's awesome. Well, he obviously had enough money to come and
Obviously.
drive there and get food now.
He was so prosperous after he did that. His business turned around. He built this really fancy wrecker truck for SEMA, and it was like one of the stars of the shows, and his business exploded. And then he ended up going to work for one of the sponsors for American Force Wheels, and just his whole life, he ended up getting remarried. He got married to a new lady, and it's just crazy, his story. But that's
Yeah,
Wow.
well, you have to put us in touch. We'd love to get him on here.
Yeah, that's wow.
Well, Kevin, if we tell us some of your stories from your missions trips. Like, I mean, you've got 23 nations later, you said. So there's a lot there.
my first trip was to Nicaragua, and 8 churches, 3 radio stations. They put me on TV. It was just a crazy trip. And then I think my second trip was really the most implemental to my life. A lady had prophesied over me in Arizona. Well, I'll go back to my first one. A lady prophesied to me when I was about 12 or 13 at a little singing at Deport. And she was shaking, her lip was quivering. It happens to be my wife's aunt, which is Brittany Gale. And she was prophesying over me. And she said, "I see you speaking to thousands of persons and millions on TV. And when you speak, they're going to hear the Spirit of God. And they're not going to hear what you say. They're going to hear what the Spirit's saying through you." So fast forward, I ended up going to Africa, and I'm in Tanzania, and it's just not working out right. I'm with a group, and it's all planned, and it just felt icky. And so I just got a plane ticket and went to Uganda. I'd been talking to this man named Conrad on Facebook, and I just thought, well, I'll go meet Conrad and just get out of this mess. And I had some spiritual covering with me, but the president was coming by the airport when they went to get on the plane. I was already on the plane, and so the convoy cut them off. So they were like a nervous wreck because I'm flying by myself somewhere, and I'm crazy for Jesus. And I was just walking through this park. I got a hotel right there, and I heard this crowd, and I walked up, and a pastor calls me up on the stage, and he said, "Are you a pastor?" And I said, "No, sir. I can't even quote John 3:16. I just can't. I couldn't at that point. I could not remember scripture. This is just right after my deliverance." And I left my Bible, and I was like, "Man, I don't have my Bible. I left it in the." He said, "Well, God told me you were coming." He said, "This is the largest revival in the world. This is our year anniversary, and here's the microphone." And I turned around, and there's 50,000 people, And he said, by the way, there's 77 million people tuned in tonight watching on social media. What I was reading Mark where it said, if you are a believer, these signs will follow you. And it says you'll cast out devils. And I really that was part of my life that just wasn't there. And so I was even questioning if I was even believing in God because these signs weren't following me. And this is really how God answered me. And it's beautiful. But I didn't have any scripture. I didn't have a sermon. All I had was my testimony.
Yeah.
And I think it lasted about an hour and a half. That what I shared with you, just deeper.
Yeah.
And he called 31. He called out the spirits. If there's any spirits dealing with families like that were dealing with him, and he called them out. And 31 people came forward against their will. He was talking to the spirits. And I saw 31 people delivered from demons that night by my hands. And, it's something I could have never even cooked up. In fact, I thought I was crazy and I thought I wasn't even there. But that's kind of how that lifestyle started. And then fast forward a little bit, I'm in Arizona on a Holy Spirit filled adventure. And this lady starts prophesying over me. And she said, you're not going to believe it unless I hand you this. This is kind of in between those trips. And so she hands me this crown, which if you'll notice, it's worn. It's a real, it's not just a trinket. And she said that she was in Taiwan and she prayed over a king and he was healed. And for her doing that, he handed her his crown as thanks for healing him. And she tried to explain to him it was Jesus. And I mean, it was a big deal. But anyway, she handed me this and she said, no, this is yours. I can't take this. And she said, no, God told me to tell you to have it. She said, I see you speaking. I see you at the head of the table with kings and queens, and God's going to give you a word for their nation that's going to shift their nation. And so I was reading in Matthew 10, real heavy, Matthew 10:8, where it says, and as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils, freely you have received, freely give. And it goes on to talk about, I send you forth in the midst of wolves, you wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And it says, and you shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for testimony against them and the Gentiles. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, Lord, how do you disciple a nation? I had a lot of questions. And we were hanging out with this woman and man, and I can send you the picture. And I remember taking a selfie, and they were like a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we're sitting at the dinner table the next day, and the pastor gets a phone call and walks off, and I'm at the other head. And so everybody's looking at me. So I prayed over the food, which is really weird to me because it's a big deal. And the lady next to me says, King, what's the state of your country? And I look over and I said, ma'am, did you just say king? After they got done talking, and she said, yeah, that's the king and queen of the Congo nation. Did you not know? You've been hanging out with them all day yesterday. And so I was like, well, ma'am, who are you? She said, I'm the viceroy of education for Africa or something. I don't know. And right then the Lord spoke to me. And I said, King, I believe I have a word from God for you. So again, I would have never, ever done this if this lady wouldn't have done it. And this lady's named Diane Ritchie. She's heavy in Israel and stuff right now. But anyways, one of my spiritual mamas. Now, so I started to speak to the king. Well, the man across from the table, I could see this video or this picture because he actually caught me and he said, hey, the king speaks French better. He does English. So if it's from God, I'd better give it to him in French. He catches me because I'm not allowed to address the king. And so he saved me right there from possibly even being thrown in prison for speaking to this guy. So it was a big deal. And so you'll see in the video where the French, the viceroy is looking at me and getting the word, or looking at the king, giving it to the king. I'm looking at so you can see the. And what the Lord told me, he said, if you will repent of your nation's sins as its king, and you will admit that he is the King of kings and the Lord of lords, God will reveal or uncover the corruption that's going on in his regime. And regime is not a word I've ever used in my life. So I knew it was God. The king had tears in his eyes. His wife was touched. And I didn't get to see it, but I did say that he went on their national television, actually repented for their nation's sins, and actually did exactly what God told him to do. And if you'll watch the news of the Congo, the Republic of Congo, you'll see like in 16 and 17 how there was a lot of uncovering of corruption. And you can kind of go back and kind of follow the story on the news of what happened. But it's just little things like that I was just, I mean, I literally was just a man that was trying to kill himself, a lawnmower salesman in my camper. And I find myself sitting at the head of the table with literal kings and queens, just like a crazy lady told me that. I literally thought, man, and I would say that I was like, these people are crazy. Even the lady that did her finger, like I was known the crazy bigger lady in Paris that's always speaking for the Lord. But I feel like we need to follow these prophets because they'll lead us down these journeys. It did take 24 years for that prophecy to come true for me. I was a 38-year-old man, and I was given that prophecy at like 12 or.
Wow.
So I was right at 24 years, I guess.
Okay. So that wasn't like after, like I was in
the lady with the shaky finger.
Yeah. Now this one happened really fast because I was starting to follow God's will. I was starting to really listen to Him, and yeah, I feel like there's more to this life than just going to work and brushing your teeth and building a relationship, having kids. I just feel like there's more to it. And I'm more of an extremist. So everything I get involved with, I'm very, very all in. It's either all in or all out.
Is there any other way?
When you walk into a nation and you're like, all right, Lord, like I'm your ambassador, like what do you want me to do? And in Indonesia, we ended up in the president's home, the most Muslim nation in the world, and we end up praying over him, his family, and anointing his home. It's just unheard of the situations and things that God's put me in. I think after the Indonesia trip, I've never spoken at a church here. They wouldn't listen to me. They thought I was nuts. And they saw my deliverance videos and they wouldn't let me, like when I go in the church, like, hey, just don't put your hands on anybody. Like they didn't want me touching anybody, thinking they're going to get demons on them because they saw my deliverance. And a lady called me. She said, hey, will you come speak at our church about missions and how missions change your life? And I'll never forget, I walked in, I was lonely on this planet Earth. I had God, and I'd been going out meeting girls on Christian Mingle and going on a date, and I'd always get frustrated because it was just a ministry moment. And I'll never forget being obedient to God. I walked in this church and I just told God, I'm done. I don't need a woman. It's just me and you. Paul said it's better just to have me and you. And that's the day this phone call happened. And Brittany's, I just walked in and saw the back of her head. And God spoke to me and he said, I've got a plan for her in your life. And it doesn't get any more clear than that, Gabe. And I thought, well, there's my missionary partner, and I walked up and she was very touched on the message. She was crying. And so when I walked down the stage and she stood up, like I looked up at her and I said, wow, you're tall. And we've been together almost ever since. We've been together for 7 years. So I've had some churches turn me down because I've had a divorce. They wouldn't let me speak on their pulpit or testify or anything. But God's involved 100% in this marriage. We waited till our wedding night, and she could not have kids at all. She was barren, and that's part of her testimony. You'll probably hear one day. And Asher is 6 years old, and he is our miracle baby. And so our life reflects in miracles. We walk in miracles. We've just about surrendered everything to him. We've still got a few things that we're holding on to that we've just got to just lay in his lap. I think the what ifs are what keeps us from I guess fully just and now I've got a family to take care of, so I do have to have that. I've got that thought in my head, like I can't just go around sleeping on people's couches anymore. But yeah, that's kind of where we are. The scariest thing I could ever tell somebody is to give their life to God. When I did that, it's like all of hell took notice. And the closer that we draw to him, the more the warfare comes against us. It's like the big guns come out. We've had a manager steal $1.1 million from us and her daughter. We've had pastors steal from us. We've had some crazy adventures. We ended up in Pakistan. We ended up coming across these slaves. We ended up buying them and setting them free. And so we paid for their bond debts and set them free and put them in business. We'd found out some of the pastors were skimming the money off of the slaves. So one of them's in jail. So it's just this adventure has been crazy wild, but we're a lot more lonely than we were before. It seems like our family, our churches, a lot of the denominations, they kind of turn their backs on us as we draw closer to Him. And there's only a few fiery friends that just stay latched on. And I'm so thankful for you, Krista, that God led me to you praying for our nation at Awaken the Dawn one year.
Yeah, that was a wild,
yeah.
wild story of its own.
That's a mission trip,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I didn't know until you said it just now that Brittany wasn't able to get pregnant before. But I remember when you guys got married just before we did, like I forget how long, not very long before, because we're coming up on 7 years together. We'll be 7 years in March. And I remember you guys got pregnant really fast.
The doctor knows it had to be that week. They couldn't figure out the day, but I know the day. I think it was the night, that first night. But yeah.
God is good.
Yeah, when me and Brittany first started dating, and we started getting a little serious, she said, "I've got to tell you something. I know God told you that He was going to restore you a family, but I can't get pregnant." And I was like, "Well, it's okay. Maybe we can adopt somebody. Maybe that just." I said, usually when God speaks, it doesn't look like what we imagine it looking like. And so I just kind of just eased her mind, and we rolled on. Here he's playing right.
Voice granted.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Another question for you. For any of in our audience who might say, like, that's great for you, you're doing all these awesome things. A lot of people think, well, that's for some people, that's not for me. What would you say to someone asking that kind of question or having that kind of doubt?
I believe that they're not diving into their identity in Him. Through Christ, you can do all things. We've got to grab onto these things and stand on them. I literally thought that it was so crazy that I could change a nation. These thoughts that come in my head now are, Lord, how do I help Sister Nelda? It's not that kind of thought. The kind of thoughts that come into my head are, how do we end slavery in Pakistan? And I asked God, I'm like, all right, God, I want to end slavery in Pakistan completely. What does that look like? And He said, I want you to look at the 903. And I had no idea. I mean, I heard the 903, like we're called the 903 around here, like, hey, I belong to the 903. Well, that's our area code. And it got me to thinking, like, so I looked up how many people are in the 903, right? And then I called my buddy, and that's with Family Set Free, Mike Brinkley, and he's really got this. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have. And his focus is just to end slavery in Pakistan. And I asked Mike, I said, how much do you think it would cost to buy all the slaves in Pakistan and pay for their debt and set them all free? And Mike said, oh, we've done a lot of studies. It gave me a number, right? So I put that number in my calculator, divided by the people in the 903, and it was $163. And so if everybody in the 903 can just come together in my area code, can come together and just pitch in $163, like, we will end slavery in Pakistan. And God's like, see how easy that is? So we named our ministry the 903. Because can you imagine what the 903 can do together?
Yeah.
If we can end slavery in a nation. One guy said, well, how many people are getting saved from this? He was really, really questioning me. We bought 91 families and paid off their debts and set them free and put them in business. And he asked me, he said, out of those 91 families, how many have truly got saved from this? And one guy said, man, I really want to get involved, but it's like you've got a bucket of water and you're trying to scoop out the ocean. It's like what you're doing is not making an impact at all. And I said, brother, could you imagine yourself in one of their shoes? And it's your 3-year-old out there making bricks 12 hours a day in the desert heat. It's your grandfather out there working with you, and your sister and your daughters and your wife and your whole family. And you've been there for 3 generations, and $500 you can't pay for in 3 lifetimes. But some crazy white person comes and says, hey, God has sent me here and He has told me to set y'all free. I've got some kind of spirit of Moses on me where I'm supposed to set the captives free. And so I want to pay for your debt. And I said, what if you were that father? I said, how much impact do you think we made in his life? If we just bought one person out of his family and set him free, how thankful he would be. I said, so this bucket of water is nothing to God. If you hand me $160 and everybody you know hands me $160, or you just go with me, we can free these people, all of them. And the nation of Pakistan doesn't even recognize they have slaves. America doesn't want to help because it's illegal, so it doesn't even exist really. In their eyes. So, but again, we are Christians, so we have the answer to the world's problems that the world don't even know how to solve. And every nation that I've been in, we see issues that the nation has, and we see a way to fix it. And here's the deal: Matthew 11:11. Jesus Christ talks about John the Baptist, and he says that John the Baptist is the greatest man that ever came out of a mother's womb. Now, this is after Jesus. I mean, John had some few things go wrong in his life, but God stayed silent for 400 years. And the first time he spoke, it was about John. And so he was the greatest prophet left. I mean, that's pretty much what Jesus said out of the Old Testament. And in Matthew 11, he said, now the least in the kingdom's greater than John the Baptist. So I just follow Todd White a lot. If you put him on a pedestal, you're going to knock him off. But Todd says a lot, is the life that you're living worth the price that he paid? And Todd is the one that really pushed me into going on these trips, really pushed me into praying for people, seeing him do it on the camera. Like it just gave me a newfound boldness to want to try. When I went to Bethel, and their teaching is, hey, you need to go out and you're powerful. You have the Spirit of God inside you. Like they talk like no other church talked to me. And like, wait a minute, I am somebody. I'm not just a grain of salt in this mix of things. I can actually go out and make a difference on this planet Earth. I think if we help one person, I mean, we've done amazing things. If you lead one person to the Lord, all of heaven stops what they're doing and rejoices. I mean, that is a giant deal. I don't think it happens every day. But out of those 91 families, we have had a few families ask what God that we serve. I'm reminded of this Muslim family. My interpreter warned me. They said, hey, that family is Muslim. Like telling me, hey, don't go help them because they're Muslim. They're not Christian. And so that made me want to go worse. I went over and we videoed him. We asked him questions, and he'd been there for 2 generations, I think, and he owed like 700, 600 something dollars. And I said, well, I'm going to pay your debt. So I even in the video, you see me, I had to take the pitchfork deal out of his hand and throw it to make him realize, hey, you don't have to stop making bricks. You don't have to make them anymore. I'm paying for your debt. He said, hey, you said that God sent you here. And I said, yes, sir. So I'm holding him. He's crying in the video. He's looking up at me. And he says, I want to know the name of your God. And this really moved me, Gabe, because I've never been asked that before. Hear people say in Jesus' name or in God, God or Lord. You hear people say Father all the time, and you wonder like, what Father are they talking to? What Lord are they talking to? Well, that's what this man asked, and I had to think really heavy because I'm holding this man. He's looking up at me. He said, I want to know what God you serve. And I told him it's Jesus, and he said, well, I know Jesus, and I said, no, I don't think you know him like I do. And I told him the story about Jesus saving me through that man. And I told him about Jesus giving me a dream. And I apologized to him. I said, 7 years ago, I was called to come here, but I was scared. So I waited. And then when Randy Howman called me and said, man, I feel like you're supposed to go to Pakistan with me. And I said, man, I've been waiting on your phone call for 7 years. And so that was our first trip to Pakistan. But anyways, we found these people. I call it by accident. That wasn't our goal when we went over there. Our goal was to speak at a crusade. And God had different plans for us, Man, this man asked me, and so he thought about it for a minute. He said, I want to serve your God. And I said, man, it's a lot bigger than that. He said, no Christian's God's ever saved me, cared about my family. No Hindu's God, no Muslim's God has ever cared for my family. But your God took time out of his day to care about my family, to help us get saved, to help us get out of this mess that we're in. Your God. So I want to follow your God. And I explained to him, if you do, and somebody finds out, they will kill you and your family. If you're baptized, if they find out. And he thought about it for a minute. He said, we owe your God everything. Our problem is we're slaves and we don't own anything. So all we have to give him is our lives. And that's the least we could give your God, is our lives. And in one moment of a 20-minute interaction, I watched a man surrender his whole family, just like it talks about in Romans. And he offered his whole family, his children, his kids, his everybody in his family. He offered them all on the altar as a living, breathing sacrifice to a God. And it happened to be the God that I serve that sent me. And man, that's what I'd say to your friends that feel like they're super Christians out there. God is no respecter of person. What he's done for Todd White, he can do for anybody.
Yeah.
You know, we have an income that's unimaginable right now from just 30 rent houses that that God's led us to buy. And that income is going to help us do full-time missionary work. It's not, we're not, we don't have a whole lot of money coming in, but to live in Nicaragua or Taiwan or Vietnam, and we're going to live like kings and queens on this income doing missionary work.
Wow.
If
Yeah,
God can do that for us, he can do that for anybody. I know people doing missionary work with a backpack that own nothing, have no income, but they are fed at every house they go to. They are put up. Every city they go to, somebody puts them up in their house and they live with nothing. I believe he'll do it. He'll meet us where we are. He just wants to be involved in the adventure.
You just described, and what you described about the slaves that you set free, like that is literally a living, breathing embodiment of the gospel. Not just as an example, but especially in the West, people who have never known slavery do not understand that is literally what Christ did. That's why he says, I want your life. Like, I've given you everything, but he literally bought us out of slavery. We were indebted. We were in bondage that we could never pay off. Ever, ever, ever. And like you literally embodied Jesus to that man and embodied the gospel to everybody who just listened to that testimony.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's not me. The me before Jesus, I could care less what they're going through. I
Uh-huh.
would even care less to find out about it. The stuff going on in Israel, the missiles and the bombs, I really could have cared less about somebody else getting bombed. It's not happened to me or my family or people I know or my friends. The 9/11 thing really didn't affect me as much as it affected other people because I didn't personally have people involved. I couldn't personally relate to that 9/11 bombing. And I really just, I didn't care. I was so selfish that I thought I could never go do something for God because I've got a job. I can never go do something for God because I don't have any money. I had all these excuses, and I really just honestly just didn't care to do it. I didn't care to ask somebody, "Hey man, you want to give me? I want to go to Africa, but I need $1,700 for a plane ticket." I would have never cared anything about Africa. So I would have never cared to even try to raise the $1,700 to go to help somebody there. And what I saw, Gabe, I saw missionaries doing all these crazy things. I think I'm just another. I can't go do anything. They're already doing it.
It's like the crowd doesn't call, nobody calls the emergency services because they think somebody else is doing it.
Yeah, if the harvest is ripe and the workers are few, like I looked at it like, oh, this is what everybody's doing. All the churches have missionaries that go out, and I really started getting into this, and I realized this is not a normal lifestyle to live for Christianity. It is to build your church, to put nice pews, to do the sound system, have a cool youth group, and have a nice parking lot, and this is the goal of the church. It really is breaking my heart. And when I go in these churches, I'll never forget one of my friend's churches. He asked me to speak, and I said, "Man, are you sure I'm not a preacher?" And I spoke at his church, and it's a crazy story of how I got the message because I'm not a message kind of giver. And it was on the angel touching the lips. It's on what we talked about, the seraphim and the burning ones. And and I specifically mentioned Africa. And I'm like, man, we got to go like honeybees and catch the glory, catch the revival, and then bring it back to our people. And we're just not going out anymore. And it looked like I paid a guy from Africa to come into that church because a guy stood up and said, I'm a beekeeper from South Africa. Like, it looked like I paid this guy. It was just, it couldn't have been more perfect. Half his church ends up going to Africa. I think 3 months ago, the pastor was in Africa. And today, right now, he is in Israel with his wife on mission. And I can't say that it was just me that changed things, but it was something inside me that planted that seed. And me and my wife prayed before we went. And you know how you go speak somewhere, and I don't know if you've done it before, but they usually pay you. Well, we were praying, and the Lord told us to write them a check for, I won't say the amount. So we wrote them a check, right? And at the end, I'm like, all right, so this is your fund for your church's mission trip. This is not for you to pay some other missionary or evangelist. This is for your church. This is to start your ministry money. And me and my wife hand them this check, and it's crazy. They had already had this check wrote. And so his wife came down and handed us a check. She'd already had it wrote. It was for the same exact amount that we wrote them for their missions. But it did. And again, I'm not saying that it was anything that I did. It was him that I allowed to be a vessel for him to work through me. Everything in me said, man, Pastor, I'm not a preacher. I'm not going to speak. That's what I wanted to say. But something in me, like this spirit rising up in me saying, you need to go ahead and do it, even if you don't have anything. Just get the microphone. I went on stage, and that's how I introduced myself. I'm Kevin Kelley. I was there was a video called The Choctaw Devil, and that I just want to let y'all know who's speaking to y'all right now. This was about 15 miles from your church on the side of the road where that video took place, where I beat up 2 police officers, and that is me. And I just wanted to get that out there before I say anything. Like, I was the Choctaw Devil. And then I gave him a message, and it went really cool. God has taught me the veil has been torn. So anything I'm going through, just go ahead and lay it out on the table. And Bill Johnson said something that really resided with me one day. He said, vulnerability creates community. So I instantly got on stage. I opened my heart, and it just opened him to receive. And it was just a cool way of the way God did it.
That's so good.
But thank you so much for your time, Kevin. Like your testimony.
And it sounds like you have a few ministries going on. You have, obviously, if you're still doing the mowing now, and then the passive income with the houses, and then you have also working on the 9-3 ministry. And you can speak to any of that. And
So in every nation, God's teaching us to take ground for him. And so we own a house in Nicaragua. It's beautiful. We host missionaries, church groups, rich people, just whatever. It's a very desirable home, and God is when you see it, it's only him. It's one of the most beautiful properties in the entire nation. I think the president's the only one that has houses that are just more amazing. And if I told you how we received it, it's nuts. If I told you about the story of this house that we live in, it was money that appeared in a safe deposit box at the bank is what paid for this house completely. So we have just crazy testimonies like that. But I love for anybody to come to Nicaragua. We'll host you. We'll take you out to the trash dump villages. We're trying to get these people out of the trash dumps, but you can go in and just cook them some meat on a grill and have a little singing with them or something, and they're just so appreciative. Somebody takes time out to see them, to help them. We can take you into the prisons in Nicaragua, and you can love on these men that are just the society is deemed unlovable. We've got a pastor that will go in with you that was a killer. That was, in fact, we went into prison with him that he actually got released from as a killer. He met the Lord in prison. God released him, and he went into that prison with us, and we got to minister to these men with a man that they all knew that was in their prison. That's a pastor. But so we got all these crazy adventures that we could send you on. We have ties in Vietnam, Indonesia, Africa, Pakistan heavily. We are working with families set free, and we're building they built an automated brick kiln machine, and so I'm using some of my knowledge here as a equipment seller to actually try to sell this equipment to the brick kiln owners to try to change the way they operate and make handmade bricks. And help them do automated. So there's a lot of things going on that you can get involved in just with through our contacts. We just met with Nations in Love. I went to Guatemala with them. They're going to Peru. They're going to Argentina. They're going to Israel or India. They do all these mission trips, and you can bring your whole family with them. And they're structured. They're safe. But yeah, we have so many contacts. If y'all just want to get off your couch, get off your pew, and I encourage everybody to go on a mission trip, and one that's led by the Spirit. The mission trip where you just go and plant some crops and build a house, like that's great.
Mhm.
But when it's Holy Spirit led, that's the kind of adventures I like. And you can mix that in with the regular mission trips. You can take side quests. But
I love that.
yeah.
How, if somebody wants to get in touch with you about
Yes.
any of this, like what's the best way to contact you?
So I'm Kevin Kelley on Facebook. If you type in Kevin Kelley with the EY and Revival, so I've got Revival in parentheses, 903 Freedom Mission on Facebook. It's really hard to find that. Facebook kind of censors that a little bit because we're politically weird about the slave thing. So they don't really push that. You have to actually type it in perfectly on Facebook to find it. On YouTube, I'm Kevin Kelley. We're going to start putting a lot more stuff on our channel. It's mainly mower stuff. If you're into mowers, at the end, you'll usually get a little bit of Jesus at the end, sneak in there. But I do have some of the videos where we freed the slaves mixed in with my mowing channel. But we're going to start a whole new channel for adventures in Nicaragua alone. And we'll explain how God gave us the house and why we're making this move. And we'll put that all on our new channel, which will be tied to Kevin Kelley.
Okay.
So yeah.
I don't think we
Perfect.
actually,
We'll link that
yesterday
stuff in
we
the
talked.
description, show notes and stuff.
Yes, yesterday we did talk to you about your move. I don't know if you've actually said it today, if you want to touch on that at all.
So we had a lot of idols still in front of God. And my biggest idol was my business. I've been there for 17 years, and it's more my child than my kids. Really, I've spent more time nurturing it, I believe, than any of my children, which is pretty messed up. But I felt like it was in front of God, so and to offer it as a sacrifice, what I did is I just listed it with my best friend. He's he's a realtor, and in fact my best friend now is the man that I was talking about in my testimony that was my salesman. In fact, he married my my ex-wife. They got married, and then they went through a horrible divorce, and I cornered him up one day and I apologized to him, and man, I gave him his job back, and so now we're best friends. Like when we teach on forgiveness, it's crazy together, you know. But anyways, I listed it with him. So he listed my business, and I was in Nicaragua, and I did it privately, like with just investment. So like local people would know it was for sale. And he called me about a week into Nicaragua, and he said, "Hey man, I sold your business," you know. And I was like, "What?" And he is, you know, I thought it was just somebody local that's been pestering me for, you know, all these years trying to buy it. He said, "No, these people are from Dallas. They've never even seen it before. I've never even met them. They just signed it sight unseen." And so we were scheduled to close September 17th of last year. And this has been a process. We're scheduled to close December 5th. And after December 5th, I'll still be involved a little bit. My name's involved in it. We're keeping a little small percentage of it to make sure my employees are taken care of. And the vision is still going out. But God's transitioned us over to passive income instead of direct income, you know, where I physically had to have my hands on this baby every day. And now with the passive income, we only have to put our hands on it every once in a while. So that was one of those idols. We laid at his feet and we're like, hey, you know what? Here. And December 5th, this chapter of my life may be closing out, and we're transitioning in. Before, we could give him about 20% of our time of the year to God, maybe 25%. And now with our life transition, with our passive income, we're going to be able to give God around 85% of our year. You know, we'll still have to have a little 20% doing our real estate and you know, and our family stuff. But so we're transitioning into that. Maybe not, I guess I'd call me a full-time missionary going into, you know, if you're giving him 80% of your year, you're pretty much full-time.
It's full-time.
Yeah. I mean, it's that
sounds pretty full-time to me.
What is that 80-20 principle that everyone talks about? You're literally doing it. So
and I don't believe we have to have all this income. I know people in Nicaragua that live off $900 a month and actually live pretty comfortable. They're one of the richest people in some of the towns.
Wow.
Because it's your average income there's $150. So they're living pretty high on the hog at $900. And most of the countries that we're involved in are all countries that you can live in very, very, very moderately, like with very little income. If $500 is 3 generations of work for all your entire family and you cannot pay the $500 debt, and somebody comes in and pays that at your nation, you can just imagine how big a deal that $500 is.
Yes.
To us, it's a car payment. To them, their mind's blown. You pay $500 a month to drive a car, like their minds are like, they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And we pay for 6 months and it's $90.
Wow.
We go out to eat at the fanciest restaurant in Pakistan. It's called Madul. It's one of my favorite restaurants, some type of skyscraper. It's $13. It's just amazing food, So, anyways, but yeah, I encourage anybody to go that has an excuse. All God needs is that yes and that sacrifice. And like, hey, I don't know what I don't. One lady told me, she said, I don't even know what $1,200 looked like, but I'm supposed to go with you. And the next day, she brought me $1,200 and paid for her trip completely. Her job gave her Christmas bonus for the first time ever. She got a Christmas bonus, and it was exactly what she needed to go to Nicaragua with us on a mission trip. And it completely changed her life by going on this trip. First time I went was on an Indian reservation here in America. You don't even have to have a passport to go. And you can go into the Navajos or Apaches or the Cheyenne Nation. The Cherokee Nation's pretty rough up in north. And I say rough, just poor. Could use some help, some prayers and some resources. And you could do that without a passport. Just go help one of your local Indian reservations. They need help. Suicide rates at an all-time high. Alcoholic rates at an all-time high. Divorce is very high. Domestic violence is very high. The highest in the nation. And if we go and we pour the Spirit out on these people in the hope of glory, like it's gonna change things. It's got to. But I just encourage you to go.
Yeah.
No matter what that looks like. If it's 10% of your time, that's tithing. You can give him 10% of your year.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go overseas. It's just the miracles will abundantly happen overseas more than it will here. And that's from personal. Now, man coming from Argentina here to do things, miracles will flow out of him way better than anyone from here. It's just, and the same way in Argentina, I go to Argentina and miracles will just happen. And where the pastor's like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to get them saved for 5 years. And here you come along and give them one word and they're all out for Jesus. It's different when you go. It's almost like Jesus ran into the same problem with his hometown, his home region. And if Jesus had that issue, can you imagine we're going to have probably the same kind of issues or worse?
It's almost like cross-pollination, different parts of the body ministering to each other. Like you said, prophets not without honor, except in his own hometown and his own family.
Also that willing spirit to go,
yeah, and
to lay down the trip, lay down the opportunities.
Yeah, I've been on a few mission trips myself, and I experienced the same thing. I've seen some miracles here, but it was just like another level. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll just share with Nations in Love.
Yeah.
Went to Guatemala with them a month ago, I think, and never met half of them. And actually nearly all of them I'd never met before, and I just met one of them. There's 32 in our group, and powerhouses, pastors, and everything. I went by myself. And I was sitting there on the mission trip thinking, God, did I make a mistake coming? Like, you've got all these powerhouses. I'm just kind of in the background. And it was, just a normal mission trip. And we showed up in this house on the side of this village, and we're just giving them a water bucket. So it gives them good, clean water for 20 years. They don't have clean water. So just simply giving them a water bucket with this filter system, showing them how to use it, and then just asking them, hey, does anybody here need prayer? And the lady's like, yeah, I've got, my son or my brother's dying back here in the bed. He drinks water out of a spoon and he can't talk. And so we go around the corner. We go to pray for him and nothing happens. And a lady in the background says, I don't think he knows Jesus. And so he ends up getting led to Jesus. And in that prayer, he starts speaking. So the whole family gets around the bed because they haven't already speaking forever. They're just trying to spoon feed him water and he just coughs it up. He can't handle it. And Once he gives his life to Jesus, again, that if that lady wasn't there to hear from the Lord, that we would have just hit a brick wall. And he sets up, starts drinking a cup of water, wants food, like he's completely
Wow, that's
healed, y'all.
awesome.
And then the mother, they said, well, his mother's blind, so we go over and pray for the mother. The mother's eyes pop open, and then the daughter's right there, and they said, hey, her daughter, she's never spoken in 24 years. She's mute, completely mute, like never, no, just mute, like never.
Wow.
And the lady that's with me goes to pray for her, and she starts manifesting a devil.
Mhm.
And so she's just praying and praying and praying. And she looks at me. She's like, here, you do it. You're more experienced in this stuff. And I'm like, no, honey, the demon's interacting with you. So we're supposed to stay focused on one person. We don't want to get this thing botched up. So remember what they told us. If we get involved with the devil, it's going to be one person. And we're all just going to back you up. So kind of lead her a little bit and help her. And she ends up, the lady starts speaking. And so in one home,
Wow.
we saw a dead man dying on the bed. And it wasn't like documented, but you could tell
Yeah.
he was ready to go,
Yeah.
and healed. And we saw blind eyes open, and we saw a mute person, all healed at one home.
That's amazing.
And before that, I was like, God, am I even in the? Why am I even here? And what's cool is on the side of this mountain, the whole family just started thanking God. And so the incense that rose up from this house, it was on the thickness of the presence of God that fell in. It didn't fall in when the healing took place, even though you can see the light shining on him and everything in the pictures. Like you can see some supernatural. No, the thickness came when the family started rising up their incense, and we could not move. Then they started singing, and I guarantee you, they heard all over that mountain. They heard this family glorifying God. We even missed we're supposed to be back at the church for a meeting, and we were like way late getting back to the church because we just couldn't. I was trying to get my phone out to video this moment. I couldn't even get it out. It was just too thick.
Wow.
But I did film a little bit where the man was getting healed and the blind eyes open with the lady. I kind of caught some of that on camera. But this went to so many churches, so many testimonies, just this one moment. And there was three groups going around, and all three of us saw miracles, all three groups. But that's why I encourage y'all to go. I mean, how many times in a 15-minute span have you seen a blind woman open her eyes, a mute person speak that hasn't spoken in 20 something years, and a dead man almost dead man rise up out of his bed completely healed and celebrated and partied? I was like, hey man, do you have some chicken to go on them tortillas? He said, no, we can't afford chicken. I was like, well, y'all getting chicken today? And me and a couple of other guys pitched in, and we helped them get meat. But what the beautiful story was, the pastora that was with us, she had not been home in 14 years, and that was her grandmother's house. And we didn't understand why. We're like, why can't we go to her house? She's like, I don't want to. And so we talked her into going. And what happened is her mother had died 14 years ago, and she just couldn't bear herself to go back home. And we happened to be with this lady in this region, and the pastor was her husband that was involved with us. And full family restoration there, and then all those miracles took place. What's cool is when we posted on Facebook, she's commenting, she's like, I'm the witness, I am the daughter, I am the one that was there. So she's actually going back behind us and to confirm the testimony of what happened. But I'm just saying, if you don't go, you might not get to see something like that, and I don't want to be the only person that can come on this camera and say, by the way, I saw a blind person, a mute person, and a
Yeah.
dead man raised the other day. Like, I don't want to be the only person, and it shouldn't be that way. This should be a normal lifestyle Christianity. All of us should have these type of testimonies. All of us can come up with $500 or $600 and purchase a family and get them out of slavery. And if we go through somebody like PPR, Mike Brinkley, that's been doing this for years, or through me, that's just got scammed, that figured out, oh my gosh, we got to have accountants, we got to have people, we can't just throw them money. We got to write checks for this family, so it's on their RFID check when that slave master goes to cash that check, where they can't take the slaves back because it's on government record that we've actually purchased their debt. And so it's little tricks like that that have to be done. You can't just throw these slave masters cash money because that they can just make up records. So we have to do it the right way. And PPI is the only authorized ministry right now to write a check for their bond debt, and it's recognized through the government. So that is why we operate through PPI.
What's PPI stand for?
So a Pakistan Partnership Initiative, and it's Mike Brinkley's company that he started in Pakistan because he did get scammed a lot trying to free these slaves. And so now he's got his own employees that vet the slaves, vet the slave masters. He's got his own accountants that go in. And they also vet ministries because there's so many fake ministries and fake pastors in Pakistan that they actually, before you ever talk to them, before you ever do work with them, they have got to be vetted because there's so much fakery going on. And it's not just Pakistan, it's even in the United States. These ministries probably need to be vetted before we work for them. And it's just part of it. There's a lot of scams out there, and they take advantage of good-hearted Christians that have checking accounts.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. We've got to start holding people accountable. I think that's where this comes up.
Yeah.
So if we come in with a big heart, you got to really watch it with people that have their hands out. A lot of times you're like, okay, God, is this you leading me to help them since they have their hand out? There's a lot of manipulators that do this and take advantage of good hearts and good Christian people. And that's where discernment falls in.
Just for clarity, you were pointing at the horse, right?
Yeah.
Okay, not the hat. I just wanted to let.
Well, this is on all of our clothing
Yes.
at our business. This is kind of our go-to verse for all of our customers, for everybody. There's one verse in Scripture. I feel like if you will live by this one verse, and that's it. This is what you stand on. This will change your life forever. If you seek the kingdom first and His righteousness, then all these other things will be added to you. That's how important the other things are. His kingdom and his righteousness are the two most important things of your life. If you'll make this Matthew 6:33 your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is something. But I was pointing to the white horse because we have got to answer to him. And all the people that we work with has got to answer to him. So we've got to hold each other accountable. If y'all see me getting off track, I expect Krista and Gabe to give me calls. Say, Kevin, man, we saw what you done on YouTube. It's not really biblical. Like we got to back you up a little bit, and help you out.
Well, you
We've got to do that.
Yeah. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
And I don't want to add one more thing to see if you wanted to. I don't know if you have all your homes that you have filled, because I'm sure if someone's moving to the Dallas area or where you have the homes.
So mainly all in Paris, Texas. And what we like to do is we like to offer owner financing. So what we do is we don't pull your credit, anything. We just ask for a down payment. We put the house completely over in your name. And then we are just simply the bank as the lien holder. That's our heart, is to offer people a home that could never, ever afford one, or could never afford the down payment, or never have the credit to buy it. And so our heart is for people to own their own property and stop renting. So, but we do have 30 houses, and we are renting them until people can afford the down payment to do on our finance. And I think we've done 5 owner finance homes. We also had a friend, his house was going back in foreclosure. We bought it the day before it went to the courthouse steps, and then now he's renting his own house from us until he can save up his down payment to rebuy it, and then we'll be the bank. So we do things like that too to help the body. And our owner finance is usually all God, Holy Spirit stories like that. And also, like, if you're moved by the ministry, like if you're moved by the things that's happening in Pakistan or Africa or Nicaragua, a lot of people are moved to just open up their checkbooks. And while that's cool, I really don't like that. I love for y'all to appoint somebody to go, and you bring your own money and you do the works that you're calling us to do, because there's no better feeling than actually you walk into one of these brick kilns and they're out there working and making their little bricks, and you show up and you're like, go in there and talk to the slave master yourself and be like, hey, I want to those, what's that family's name out there? How much do they owe? And then we have our team go in there and just check all the paperwork, make sure they're not trying to scam you. And then you actually be like, okay, so I brought all this money from my church, and we want to pay for this debt. We all release this family to us. And so, and y'all get to actually do this or send somebody to do it for you and can video it or film it. It is just it's a feeling like no other. You talking about seeing somebody's countenance change when they've been a slave all their life and then all of a sudden they're free. It is an experience I want you to be involved in. I don't want to be getting all the blessings and the glory being a part of the glory that God's doing of that. I want y'all to be a part of that glory that God's doing. And I want y'all to physically get to see it. Whether you appoint somebody, send somebody with us, it's the worst part's the plane ticket. I promise. Everything else is cheap, but to experience that and then to go out there to the family and you get to shake their hands and you get to explain to them how this took place because it's the most life changing thing of their lives. And so you can explain to them like how this took place, like how your church took up this offering and was led to pick 6 families or 1 family or whatever, and to be a part of that whole process is crazy. Or if you want to help with Nicaragua, it's a $300 round trip ticket if you're wanting to fly Spirit or Avianca, especially from you guys from Florida. Dude, it is so easy to fly to Nicaragua. It's $188 every time I look, maybe around $200 just to fly to Nicaragua. It's nothing. Any of the Latin America countries are pretty cheap. Your South America is a little higher. You can go down there and make a difference. One guy said, man, I'm not really good at anything. I'm not good at speaking. And so I told him, I said, hey, you want to go buy some meat? And what we're going to do is we're just going to grill some meat. And we're just going to grill for this village. And so we grilled some meat, and this men started coming up with tears in their eyes. I'm like, what made y'all do this? And some of the men were saying, this is the first time we've had meat in 10 years. They're used to living off rice and beans and whatever they dig out of the trash dump. So that guy felt like he changed their world by cooking some meat on a grill.
I can cook. I can grill.
Yeah, there's one girl in my pictures on my testimony. She's eating ice cream. Her name's Maria. She's 12 years old, and that was her first taste of ice cream. And that picture is sitting next to blind people getting healed and fire glowing off people. But her first bite of ice cream was a very impactful thing. And so if you can't do anything but buy somebody a scoop of ice cream that they've never even tasted or heard of before, never even imagined eating because they live in a trash dump,
right?
That changed her world. So you can go out and change the world.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been such a blessing. So y'all, again, if you want to reach out to Kevin, go to his Facebooks, Kevin Kelley. I think you said spelled with an EY, K-L-L-E-Y, 903 Ministries, a few different things. We'll link that in
we'll have a lot of notes.
Yeah, the show notes and description as such. Thank you, Kevin. And we'll definitely have to have you back sometime. I know you got more stories.
We'll see y'all out in the mission field.